Hello and welcome to the Girls Fuel podcast. My name is Haley. I'm a registered dietitian and nutrition coach here to help you along your health and fitness journey by providing evidence and experience-based knowledge. And as always, full transparency. It is that time of year. The holidays, especially if you're in the States, in America, are right around the corner. We're going to be dropping this one right before Thanksgiving. So this is the time where we need to talk about how we can navigate the holidays as stress-free as possible. That is our goal for this episode. So today we're going to be diving into how we approach the holiday season personally, which is very different than we have in the past, as well as how we help our clients dive into the holidays or even just like big events that are out of your norm, like a trip or a wedding or something of that nature, to keep you from feeling like you totally fell off track and have to like totally restart after the holidays. That is the biggest thing we want to avoid. So we have like a step-by-step process that we take with our clients. I think without even realizing it, I just was like brainstorming and writing out the outline. I was like, this is what we typically do. So we're going to take you through that one step at a time and then talk about maybe some of the nuances that go on with different types of family members, different loved ones, and just like different phases of your journey. So the biggest thing that we'll talk to our clients about first is just like setting your intentions for the event. This is the most important, and it's important to be realistic, right? Because I know I've gone into a holiday saying, oh, I want to be good. I want to eat clean. I'm just going to have some of like for Thanksgiving, the turkey and the veggies, and that's it. That's all I'm really going to have. And that always ends up setting me up for failure, right? Because then we restrict ourselves all day during dinner. We barely snack on anything. Honestly, I used to not even make it to dinner. I would say that I was going to do that, but then like my stepdad's family, we don't really go to their house anymore because they live up north, but they were big on doing like the picky appetizers beforehand, which like isn't even my thing. I don't even like that kind of stuff that much. Like nuts and cheese and crackers. But we would just be standing around like waiting for dinner to start. And I dreaded that. I dreaded that part of the night so much because when we're standing there talking, I couldn't help but pick the whole time. And then it becomes a fun thing where you and your aunt are chatting and picking. And it's not a bad thing. So I want to lead this episode by saying, expect that you're going to eat shit you don't usually eat. Go into it with that expectation. Don't go into it saying, I'm not going to eat anything. I'm going to be good and I'm going to avoid this, that, the other thing, because then not only are we likely going to overdo it somewhere along the lines, whether it's right when you get there or maybe we're good all dinner and then we go crazy in the dessert. The big thing to remember is that if we're overly focused on the food, we're not going to be present with our loved ones. So the big thing is going to be setting your intentions. And one thing I'll always tell my clients to think about is, okay, especially if you know what the event's going to be like. And if you don't, that's like step number 2, we'll set the scene. Where are you going? Whose house is it at? What do they typically have for food? What is the vibe of the family members? Are they like pushy, try this? Are they really like crazy drinking? What's going on there? And then think about like of the food that's usually there or that you know is going to be there. And if you don't know, maybe you just get on the phone with your parent or whoever it is and be like, oh, what are you guys having? Because you're curious. So that way, all right, these are the things I really care about eating. I want to enjoy those things. And the biggest thing, and if you get one thing from this episode, it's this. You can stop listening now. I'm just kidding. Please don't. You don't have to eat things that you don't want to eat just because they're there or just because somebody else made it. So like making people feel bad, like that is something that we need to get over. And we're going to talk about like ways to like phrase things so that way we're not offending people. We're not being rude about it, but we're just truly trying to honor what our body wants and needs. So the big thing is just like we talked about, setting your intentions for that meal, which we'll get into as we go. And then also setting the scene. So Jess, I know you're talking about this a little bit more offline, but what did you talk to your clients about, especially now we're already starting to talk to our clients about this and it's only the first November. What are some suggestions that you have for this aspect of things and even like your own experience?
Yeah, so even starting to think about it now and not necessarily prepare to a T, but just have an idea so that you're not stressing about the holidays because especially people who are on GI plans are struggling with their digestive health and really want to really get started on healing their guts and they're very committed to this. I think that it's easy to have stress around these things early on because you're with family members, maybe they're more pushy and maybe they don't have a ton of options that you know that you can usually have. And so my one client talked to me about family members who would always bring up her plate and what she was eating
Ugh.
because she eats very differently than her family. She's vegan actually, and none of her family members are. And usually it's canned veggies and cheesy appetizers and things like that, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. You just need to find a way to get around it in a way that makes you the most comfortable. And I'm not sure if we want to get into some how to go about pushy family members, but you know what? It's okay to what I said, the first thing is refocusing the topic of conversation. If you let people continue to bring up your plate, what are you eating? Like, why are you eating that? Right? Those are the worst comments to get. And I understand your frustration with that because I used to get Haley and I used to get it all the time. My biggest thing is refocus the conversation and that will get the point across. If it doesn't, then that's at the point where you can bring that family member aside. But in terms of refocusing, when someone makes a comment about my plate, I always say, I'll either make it a joke and say, yeah, and just completely refocus the conversation and ask about them because people love to talk about themselves.
Me
So
too.
if Aunt Jan says, oh, what are you eating? You say, oh, just tell them very simply, this is what I'm eating. Keep it short. And then say, what about you? What are you doing? Whatever. Ask any sort of question that you can about their day, cooking, anything. And that will get the point across really quickly. And then if not, then that's at the point where you can bring your aunt to the side and have a conversation with them about how you don't appreciate making comments about your food.
Yeah. And I feel like usually too, we don't have to get to that point with our family members, especially
No.
not growing up, but like in my early 20s, like bodybuilding and especially my immediate family, like my dad and my grandparents, who I do see a lot, they always used to make comments about what I'm eating, what I'm not eating, what my body looks like. And I
Mhm.
never
Mhm.
honestly had to get to the point where I would be like, all right, can we not talk about my body? Can we not
Yeah,
ask
me
me a
too.
million questions? Like it makes me uncomfortable. I never had to do that, but I would just refocus the conversation. But there are also things that we can do to normalize the things that we're doing and make your help yourself feel like you fit in at that dinner, right? Because I know for me personally, especially when we're talking about having a lot of GI issues, we have a lot of clients that are already getting stressed about it because they're like, oh my God, am I going to have to cook my own meal because this food is a
Yeah.
trigger, that food is a trigger, everything that they eat has gluten or has cheese, and everybody's going to be drinking and all of this
Hmm.
stuff. The biggest thing that I'll recommend my client do and even ask them to talk to their family about is, hey, are you going to bring something to the event? Whether it's a holiday, a
Yeah.
potluck, like it really doesn't matter what it is, Super Bowl party, because that's going to be coming up too. Can you bring something or multiple things? And this is what really helped me when I was struggling with my gut and I knew I wasn't going to eat really like the stuffing. I wasn't going to have any alcohol. I wasn't going to do much with the dessert because those foods were either triggers for me. I was in a GI protocol, or maybe you're just in a phase of your journey, which again, there are two ends of the spectrum where we're actually being a little bit more careful with our food choice in a gut journey, in a gut health phase. But with our other clients, maybe who aren't in a gut health phase, and this is what we both are in now, is where we can just balance our plate in a way that makes us feel good. So I'm going to talk about those
Yeah.
two different scenarios where one, if you're someone that is struggling with your gut health so severely that you're afraid to try new things, you don't know what something's going to do to you, if you're going to have to run to the bathroom, if you're going to have a stomach ache or get a balloon belly bloat or anything of that nature. So that's where what I'll always recommend is asking the host if you feel comfortable what they're having. So that way, all right, this I can eat, that I can eat. Even if you don't feel comfortable, bring something that you can eat. Bring something that you can
Hmm.
eat. So, like for Thanksgiving, I still make this because it's fucking great and everybody loves it. But my family always used to, they're better now. I think seeing me bring vegetables and bring more dishes to the table has helped them try the things. So it's not all
Yeah.
bad. Like, especially if you're someone that is bringing something that's a little bit healthier, like I do, people will try it and they'll ask you what's in it and they'll be like, that's it. It's amazing. So I make a sweet potato squash
Yeah.
casserole and I use like a very natural maple syrup. I've even used like a low sugar maple syrup, very little amount, cinnamon. I've used butter. I've used non-dairy butter. There are a lot of different
Mm.
ways you can spin this dish and it's so good. And then I'll also usually ask my mom because I just don't like green bean casserole. Do you like green bean casserole?
What is green bean
I
casserole?
keep forgetting that you're a Canadian. I don't like it. So it's made with a creamy soup. It's like cream of
Oh,
soup or something with green beans and these like crispy things. I just think it's disgusting. I think it tastes so bad. But anyway, people love it. And that's one thing that I've had clients be like, oh, damn, like there's going to be a lot of that. And for my girls that aren't struggling with their gut health, I'm like, dude, if that's something that's important to you, have it. And when there's
yeah.
three other things in front of you that you could care less about eating, like for me, I don't give a shit about having mashed potatoes on Thanksgiving because I eat potatoes all the damn time. Right. So again, if I'm being choosy and you like the green bean casserole, have that. Maybe you have that and you don't do as much butter on your bread roll or you don't have an extra drink, right? It's like picking and choosing. But for
Yeah.
someone that's struggling with their gut, I last year, the year before, asked my mom, hey, when you're buying green beans, can you just buy extra and we can make some on the side that I can just put some olive oil and salt on? And they do, and there's no problem. And other people end up eating it too. So that's one example. There is another really hard one, especially if
Yeah.
you are more sensitive to gluten or dairy, or maybe you just want to have a safe food, right? Maybe you just want to have something that you know you feel good eating. My go-tos, I have two. One is the apple crisp that I make, and I made this a couple weeks ago.
Yeah. You
I'll
said
share the
that.
recipe if you want the recipe. It's so good, and it's totally gluten-free. It's literally just like oats, an oat flour, or you can do a brown rice flour or whatever you feel comfortable with. Apples, lemon juice, honey, things of that nature.
Yeah.
So good, so fresh, leaves you feeling good after, not super heavy. Or this is what I actually did for Thanksgiving last year, and nobody knew, but I brought cookies that they're called Sweet Loren's or Lauren's, Loren, and they are gluten and dairy free. You would never know it though. They're
No,
good.
that's
It's
so
like
cool.
cookie dough. They're so good. And I just brought 2 packs of those and I made them. And I was like, hey, worst case, because I also don't like pie. I really don't like pie. My grandma makes an ice cream pie, and that is my shit. But that is the one dessert that I can.
Oh.
But otherwise, I'm like, I don't really like the feel how I feel after I eat a shit ton of sugar. So that's where I like to bring one of my own desserts. But again, if you're someone that maybe isn't struggling with their gut health and you want to lean
Mm.
into more flexibility with your day, yes, find out what foods are going to be there that you feel comfortable with. But then when you're building your plate, it still should look pretty balanced, right? Especially thinking about Thanksgiving or even Christmas. A lot of us
Mm.
have a turkey or a chicken or a ham. So you'll get some protein in there. Again, everybody's family is super different depending on like how they grew up. So usually you will have some sort of protein. So grab some of that. Usually there will be a veggie. So grab some of that. And then use the 50-50 rule. If half your plate is protein and veggie, use the other half to fill it with the fun stuff that you're looking forward to, right? So maybe
Yeah.
so that's mac and cheese. Maybe for you, that's your green bean casserole, or for me, it's stuffing. Now, when I'm eating gluten, it's stuffing. When I'm not eating gluten, I would say, oof, that's a hard one. I don't know what it is. I fucking love stuffing. I don't know what it is
I
right
know,
now. I love
same.
dessert. So it's just about picking and choosing and reminding yourself the
Yeah.
food will always be there. If I didn't try something tonight, or if I want more of this tomorrow, I can have more. And it's also, I think we need to normalize having a day or two here and there where we do eat a little bit past full. It's not like you're binging or likely losing control. It's that you're enjoying making a memory with your family. And
Yeah.
sometimes that's just how it goes. Like it doesn't have to be something that we're guilty about or over exercise as a result. We should be checking in with our hunger signals though. And this is something that we'll also talk through with our clients. Jess, I'm not sure if you talked to your clients about this one yet, but where when we get to the table, we regulate our nervous system. We take a couple deep
Yeah.
breaths. We evaluate what's in front of us. We evaluate what we want to put on our plate. And we do that. You serve yourself your plate. And that's where, when you're about halfway, maybe a little bit more than halfway done with your plate, before you evaluate grabbing more, because that's usually when I start to grab more, I'm like, oh, I'm almost done. Might as well fill up again, which isn't wrong. You might need to do that because you're hungry, right? But before you do, why don't we pause, put our utensils down, take a couple deep breaths, maybe run to the bathroom and go pee just to break things up, go kiss your grandma, go get some water, and evaluate how full is my tummy. And I know that sounds ridiculous. That's something you'd probably say to your kid, but how full is my tummy? How am I feeling? Do I have room for more? Do I want to eat more? Am I good now? Am I good until dessert? You might want to eat
Mm.
more. Especially on a holiday, I almost always have 2 plates, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? You might want to eat more, but it's really good to just check in with yourself so that way you don't just get to the point where you're like, shit, I am stuffed and I still have dessert.
Hmm.
So that's where just checking in, taking small sips of water throughout, pausing to have conversation, because that's the other thing. yes, Thanksgiving, I'm hyped about the food. I fucking love Thanksgiving food, but Thanksgiving isn't about the food. It's about it's your family, your loved ones,
Yeah.
whoever you're spending time with. So really trying to be present with them and understanding that one day really isn't going to make that big of a difference. You're not going to gain 20 pounds overnight. And honestly, it may be in your best interest to just keep your butt off the scale for the next few days anyway, because it's going to be up
Yeah.
and there's no need to really stress about it. And I'm curious, Jess, how you've navigated the holidays over the last few years yourself.
Yeah, so I'm Canadian Thanksgiving. So we just had our Thanksgiving. And so one of my biggest things that I wanted to mention, Haley, is to everyone else listening, is that you have to figure out what works the best for you. What are you willing, if you do not want to experience any flare-ups, what do you need to do to avoid those? Or if is it going to be worth not feeling your best? After Thanksgiving dinner, I'm going to be eating, let's say 20% of things that I know might not sit well with me. But 80% of what I'm eating, I know is going to sit well. But again, you don't know how people are cooking these things, right? So expect that you might not feel amazing after, right? Even if you do everything to a T, which I don't necessarily recommend, you might not feel amazing. So, what's your plan? What's your, what I mean by that is, what's your, like, how are you, what's your management plan for, say, for example, if you have a stomach ache after, right? That's big for me. I know I'm not going to feel my best after a Thanksgiving meal that I might have. For me, I want to avoid a flare up. But again, I'm going to have some of those foods that I love. My grandma makes these potatoes that are they're Granny's famous potatoes, and she makes them with an entire bag of potato chips and hash browns and sour cream and all the things that that like the gluten and the dairy and so yeah, I'll have a very small portion of it, right? It's worth it to me.
Yeah.
And then guess what? The whole next day I'm like hydrating and using tea and for me it's worth it. If you want to avoid a flare up at all costs and you are on a GI protocol, then yeah, absolutely. Bring either way, bring a couple dishes that you know you can rely on, right? Bring the things that you do not want to miss out on that you feel like you might need to. So like an appetizer. Like for me, when I snack all throughout the night, that is just a recipe for disaster for me myself. Like when I'm eating like picking all day on the appetizers and then the meal. And for me, that's a recipe for disaster. So what I try and do is I bring an appetizer that I know will sit well with me. And then I feel like I'm enjoying everyone's company and hanging out, but also getting to enjoy some food. And then I have some of that. And then for dinner, usually, again, small moderation of things that I know may cause an upset. And then everything else is pretty balanced. My meat, veggies, potatoes, stuff like that. And then for dessert, I usually bring some sort of a dessert that I know is going to sit well with me. Again, I don't love the way dessert makes me feel, especially if I'm already full. So I love to bring a cookies, something smaller. So like sorbet, sometimes I'll bring, or some sort of healthier version of an ice cream that other people love too. Haley, like something small, cookies or something like that. And then you feel like you're still involved. You're still eating the things that you think is going to be worth it. And then, yeah, you're still involved in everything. And then you have a management plan after.
Yeah.
That's my,
And
how
that's,
I go.
I feel like you're like the other extreme because at least you've always had a sensitive gut, even if you're not dealing with
I,
any immediate
I
GI,
do.
like you don't
Yeah.
have any gut infections right now, but you're still like more
No.
sensitive. So if you are someone that's in the thick of it and you are more sensitive, like Jess, or you could be worse if you're dealing with full blown like a SIBO or something. That's where it can help to also bring your support supplements, bring your teas when you travel. A lot of our girls that have been with us for a while, they have their travel pack of their teas and
Oh,
their
yeah.
digestive enzymes and their magnesium. So don't let the things that you do for yourself at home fall off if you're traveling. Think about what those non-negotiables are that make you feel your best. I no
Yes.
longer feel like I have to work out on Thanksgiving to enjoy it.
Yeah.
The last few years we haven't because we've traveled on the actual Thanksgiving day, but I like to get a long walk in because that makes me feel normal. It makes my day feel normal. And this is something a lot of our clients will also really focus on is earlier in the day, we don't skip meals. We do not starve ourselves
No.
into the holidays. Do not even do it. Please don't do it to yourself. But it
Yeah.
is smart to maybe start the day with higher protein and have your normal meals and snacks, but maybe lean a little bit lower on carbs and fat if you know that you're going to
Yeah.
be indulging. I don't think that's a bad thing, But another thing to remember is your body can handle a day or two of higher calories. Your body is going to be
Yep.
just fine as long as you go back to what you were doing before. You don't need to cut your calories after, because that's where we get into that video of trashing our thyroid and gaining weight. Just eat normally, tune into your body, and remind yourself, like, hey, the food's always going to be there. I can really remind myself of that, bring stuff home, and focus on the family. And also remember that not all emotional eating is bad. Like, we could consider sharing, and this is a memory that I have from one of the last Christmases we had with my grandpa who passed. But there was one Christmas where my grandparents on that side made like a pudding pie. So it was like the pie crust. They actually made it gluten free because my dad has celiac. So we ate a lot of gluten free stuff on that side of the family.
Oh,
My grandma or aunts would make the gluten-free pie crust, and it's massive. It's a whole ass pie filled with like pudding and whipped cream. And I know it sounds weird, but it's really
oh,
good. And if you've
kind
never
of
tried
sounds.
that, it's
I
really
have.
good. But there was
You
one,
US people know how to do it, man.
just like an old people thing. And my grandparents were diabetic, so it was like sugar-free pudding, which to each their own, but I liked it. But that was like my grandpa and I thing. So like we're sitting there like talking with spoons in the pie crust. That was emotional eating in a way, because it was like I was sharing an emotional memory with my grandpa, but it didn't mean I lost control. Did I eat past fullness? Yeah, but that's life. You make those memories and sometimes food is involved. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. So a lot of it really comes down to reframing that mindset and setting yourself up for
Yeah,
success mentally, but also physically going into that day. So if you're depriving yourself,
totally.
in a calorie deficit, maybe we do a repeat or reverse up for a
Yeah.
week before the holidays to make sure that we're less likely to go overboard. Our metabolism is a little bit more primed for it, and we're in a better spot before going into it. So the big thing is, you just because you overate a little bit on the holiday doesn't mean you did anything wrong or you fell off track, or that you need to do anything different from then on. You might even need to rest a little bit, especially if you are someone that is a bit more sensitive and you're feeling more fatigued or bloated or having GI distress. You may need to take an extra rest day after the holiday, like Jess mentioned, with the extra water, go for your walks, do something to
Yeah.
get movement in, and wait for your body to coop from that little bit of fatigue.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. The management plan.
Yeah, and not everybody needs that. Like, I can say I'm in a
No.
place where I don't. Like, I can, for the
Yeah.
most part, even though I'm filled with mold at the period of time where we're recording, my digestion is fantastic right now. So I could probably eat a little extra gluten or a little extra dairy with no issue. So that's where like my focus for the holidays this year, I honestly, this is the least I've ever thought about it in my entire life, where I don't feel the need to come up with a plan. I don't feel the need to ask what
Yeah.
people are serving. I'm going to make something because I like to, but you can eventually get to that point. But it really takes the reps of letting yourself
Hmm.
go out to eat on a trip, or going out to dinner with your significant other or with your friends if you don't normally, and showing yourself, hey, I can do this without going overboard. I can do this and my
Yeah.
body won't implode. So that can set you up for success even before the holidays, is just like practicing going out if you're not somebody that does a lot, or having a meal here and there that might be untracked or that might be atypical, cooking with somebody else to really show yourself that your body is resilient. So I hope that's the main thing that you take from this episode, is a couple days of holiday eating aren't going to kill you, even if you have a gut
No.
issue. If you do have a gut issue, though, the number one thing that you need to do is not drink or not overindulge in alcohol, because that's obviously not going to help. But when it comes to the mix of food and alcohol, just pick your battles. That's really what it is.
Yeah.
Pick your battles and find what's going to make you feel your best mentally, physically, enjoyment wise, and lead with that. Do you have anything to add?
No, I think that's great. I completely agree with you. And yeah, trust yourself, trust your body, be patient with yourself, and just know that you're going to make a good decision, right? And don't overthink it too much. You will make a good decision based on what's good for you. And if not, then that's a learning experience.
It's a learning experience, and don't be
Yeah.
afraid to ask for support either. This is honestly one of the main things that we work on with our clients in the very
Yeah.
beginning, is their relationship with food, how they view eating out or these more special events, because the more we can normalize these things, the less stress we're going to have around them. Because realistically, it's just another meal. It is. It's a very
Yeah.
special meal for a lot of us, but it is just another meal. So the more that we can work on our mindset and our strategies to normalize it, the better we're going to feel. And it's going to look different for each one of us. So hopefully
Yeah.
you learned something in this episode that you can take and implement this year. And if you did, I would love to hear from you before, after. If it's after, let us know how your holidays went. And if you do need support, our inboxes are always open. So we'll wrap it up there. If you like this episode, make sure you subscribe, share it with a friend who might also need it. And thank you so much for hanging out with us.